The handcuffs closed around Marcus Carter's wrists in the lobby of the building that carried his name. 2 guards had him bent over the reception desk, his cheek pressed to the granite he'd picked out himself 18 years earlier. 400 employees stood frozen on the mezzanine phones up recording. And Victoria Hayes, the CEO he had personally hired, looked down at the man who built all of it and said loud enough for every phone to catch, "Get this thief out of my building." Marcus didn't shout, didn't struggle. He turned his head just enough to speak. "Preserve the footage," he said quietly. "All of it. Because the woman with the badge walking through those front doors already knew exactly who he was. Before we go further, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. And if you believe a man's character should outlive whatever they say about him, subscribe and stay with me all the way to the end. Part 5 is the one you'll remember. The phone buzzed at 4:41 in the morning, and Marcus Carter was already awake. He'd been awake since 3. That happened more often now that he was 58. A man gets to a certain age, and his body stops asking permission. It just wakes him up, hands him his thoughts, and lets him sit with them in the dark until the coffee maker clicks on. He was at the kitchen table in a gray t-shirt and reading glasses, a legal pad in front of him when the screen lit up. No name, just a number with an Atlanta area code. One message. Q3 vendor ledger, pages 40 through 61. Look at the routing numbers, not the names. Then delete this thread. Marcus read it 3 times. He set the phone face down on the table. Then he picked it back up and read it a 4th time. "All right," he said out loud to nobody. "All right." He got up, poured the coffee, he wasn't supposed to drink anymore, and went down the hall to the room he still called the office, even though it had been a nursery once and a playroom after that, and then for 4 years a teenage girl's disaster zone, and now it was just a desk and a filing cabinet and a wall of photographs. He turned on the lamp. The photograph closest to the light was Renee, 32 years old in that picture, hair pulled back, laughing at something off camera, holding a paper plate at somebody's cookout. 18 years gone, and he still couldn't walk past it without slowing down. "Somebody's playing games at your company, baby," he said. Then he sat down and opened the laptop. It took him 90 minutes. Marcus still had access. Not the fun kind. Victoria had walked most of the operational systems away from him years ago, and he'd let her, because that was the whole point of hiring somebody good. But he was chairman. He was the controlling shareholder. He got the board packet, the quarterly financials, the audit summaries, and the full vendor ledger, because he'd written that requirement into the governance documents himself back when the company had 11 employees and a leaking roof. Nobody had ever bothered to take it away. Probably because nobody believed he actually read it. He read it. Pages 40 through 61 were the general vendor disbursements for the 3rd quarter, 400 and some line items, cleaning contracts, server leases, legal, travel, catering, the boring bloodstream of a company that did $900 million a year in revenue. And in the middle of all that boring, 3 names he didn't recognize. Halcyon Grid Solutions, Infrastructure Consulting, $11.4 million. Meridian Logistics Partners, Deployment Support, $16.8 million. Ardent Facility Services, Site Readiness, $19.2 million, $47,400,000. Marcus sat back. $47 million was not a number that hid. $47 million was not a rounding error, and it was not a rogue manager with a company card. $47 million had to be approved, signed, coded, and buried by somebody with the authority to bury it. He pulled up the routing numbers the way the message told him to. All 3 vendors banked at the same institution. All 3 had consecutive account numbers. All 3 had first been paid in the same 11-day window in March. Marcus took off his glasses and pressed his thumb and forefinger into his eyes until he saw color. "Come on now," he said. "Y'all didn't even try." He heard the front door at 6:20, and his whole chest loosened the way it always did. "Dad," Naomi called from the hallway. "Why are all the lights on? Are you having a stroke? Blink twice." "I'm working. It's 6 in the morning." Then I got a head start. She came in still in her scrubs, 22 years old, 6 weeks into a residency track ICU rotation at Emory Hair, tied up dark circles under her eyes that he hated and was proud of at the same time. She dropped into the chair across from him, the way she'd been dropping into chairs since she was 4. 12-hour shift, she said. Turned into 14. "You eat." "I had a granola bar." "That's not eating, that's negotiating." "Dad, I'll make eggs." "Dad." She leaned forward and looked at the laptop screen. What is that company thing? You don't do company things anymore. That was the whole deal. That was your entire personality for 18 years. I don't do company things anymore. I coach the 8th grade robotics club. Marcus almost smiled. Somebody sent me something. Somebody who don't know yet. Naomi's face changed. She'd grown up in a house where the phone ringing at strange hours had meant something once. She remembered more than he wished she did. Is it bad? He thought about lying to her. He'd been lying to her about work since she was 4 years old. Small, soft lies the kind fathers tell, so their kids can sleep. Everything's fine, baby. Nothing's wrong. Daddy's just tired. She wasn't 4 anymore. Somebody moved $47 million out of my company through vendors that don't exist, he said. Naomi blinked. Your company? That's the part you heard. That's the first time in 11 years I've heard you call it your company. Marcus looked at the screen. Yeah, he said. Well. She got up, came around behind his chair, and put her chin on the top of his head, the way she used to when she was small enough to stand on the rungs. What are you going to do? Drive down there. To the office. To the office. Dad, it's Tuesday. Do you even have a badge? I'm the chairman, Naomi. That's not what I asked. Marcus reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a card on a black lanyard. Old plastic corners worn soft, his photograph from a decade and a half ago, back when his beard was still all black instead of half salt. Carter Marcus D. Founder. All access. I got a badge, he said. Naomi looked at it for a long second. Eat something before you go, she said. He met Walter Briggs at the Waffle House on Piedmont at 7:15 because that's where they'd been meeting for 22 years, and because Walter Briggs did not own a computer he trusted. Walter was 71, built like a bag of hammers, and had been Carter Sentinel's first controller, back when controller meant a man in a folding chair doing arithmetic on a legal pad in a garage that smelled like solder and motor oil. He'd retired 6 years ago. He still wore a tie to breakfast. Marcus slid the printouts across the table. Walter put on his glasses. Read for 4 minutes without saying a word. The waitress came poured left. He didn't look up. Then he set the pages down and pushed his plate 2 inches away, which for Walter Briggs was the same as another man throwing a chair. How long? Walter said. March. Which March? This one. Then it started before this one. Walter tapped the page. Nobody's first crime is $19 million. This is somebody's 4th or 5th crime. The first one was probably $80,000 and a fake invoice, and when nothing happened, they got brave. That's what I figured. Who signs off on vendor onboarding? Procurement, then finance, then compliance. 3 gates. 3 gates. Walter looked at him over the top of his glasses. Marcus, 3 gates don't all fail by accident. I know it. Somebody either opened them or somebody was told to look at the wall while other people opened them. I know it, Walt. Walter picked up the coffee, set it down without drinking. You know what I keep thinking about that night in the garage? 98-99. Renee's out there in the driveway with a flashlight in her mouth holding a board for you, and you're telling me I remember this. You're telling me the whole point of the company is that when the hospital loses power, the doors still open and the oxygen still flows. That was it. That was the pitch. Still is. Then let me say the ugly thing. Walter leaned in. If a man can move $47 million out of that company without you knowing what else can he move, because you don't sell soap, Marcus. You sell the software that holds up trauma centers and 911 dispatch and half the emergency grid between here and Sacramento. Money's the least dangerous thing in that building. Marcus was quiet. You thought of that already, Walter said. About 4 this morning. And I'm going down there. To do what exactly? Ask a question. Walter laughed once without humor. You are the only man alive who thinks ask a question is a strategy. It's worked before. You were 40 then, and you had a wife who'd tell you when you were being a fool. Walter folded the printouts, squared the edges, handed them back. Take a lawyer. I don't need a lawyer to walk into my own building. Walter looked at him for a long moment. Marcus, he said, I've known you since Clinton. You've never once been wrong about a circuit, but you have been wrong about people every single time, and it's always the same mistake. You think everybody else is running the same math you're running. Marcus put money on the table. Call me when you're out, Walter said. I'll call you. Marcus? I said I'll call you. He called Victoria from the truck at 8:40, parked 3 blocks from the building with the engine running. She picked up on the second ring, bright as a bell. Marcus, it's been forever. How's Naomi? Is she still at Emory? She's good. That girl. Honestly, when I think about her at the holiday party and what was it, 8th grade, telling my head of engineering he was wrong about something. He was wrong. I was completely wrong. Victoria laughed. It was a good laugh. It had always been a good laugh, warm and easy, the laugh of a woman who could get 400 people to run through a wall for her. What can I do for you, Marcus? I've got a question about Q3. A pause. Barely there. Half a second. Sure. Halcyon Grid Solutions. Nothing. Meridian Logistics Partners, Marcus said. Ardent Facility Services. Okay. $47.4 million, Victoria. Same bank. Consecutive accounts. Onboarded 11 days apart. The line was quiet. Then, where did you get that? Marcus looked at the traffic light in front of him. Red, then green, then nobody moving anyway. That's the question you're leading with, he said. Marcus, I got it out of the board packet, the one you send me every quarter, the one you assumed I don't read. That's not... Who are they, Victoria? They're Marcus. We're in the middle of a federal deployment expansion. We have 9 states rolling out simultaneously. We spun up regional integration partners because we could not staff it internally. And yes, some of them were onboarded quickly. Site readiness. What? Ardent Facility Services. $19.2 million for site readiness. Marcus's voice never went up. Not once. Victoria, I wrote the site readiness protocol. It's a checklist and a spectrum analyzer, and 1 man in a truck. It costs $4,000 a location. You'd need 4,800 locations to spend $19 million, and we don't have 4,800 locations, we have 612. Silence. 612, Marcus said. I know the number. I'm the one who's been signing the certification letters for 18 years, remember? You send those to me too. Marcus. Her voice had changed, cooled about 10 degrees. I think this is a conversation for the board. I am the board. You're the chairman. I'm the controlling shareholder, Victoria. I hold 51% of a company I built in a garage while my wife was dying, and I handed you the keys to it because I believed you'd take care of it. He took a breath. So I'm going to come down there this morning, and you're going to open the ledger with me, and if there's an explanation, I will apologize to you personally in front of your whole executive team. I'd be happy to. I'd love that outcome. Today is not a good day. Why isn't today a good day? We have there are things in motion you're not read in on. Marcus went very still. Say that again. Marcus, there are things in motion at my company that I'm not read in on. You asked for it this way. Her voice snapped finally, the first real thing she'd said. You wanted to be gone. You wanted to be the ghost on the letterhead who shows up to the Christmas party and coaches the robotics team. For 11 years, Marcus, I built this. I took it from 90 million to 900. I put us in 31 states. I did that, and now on a Tuesday morning you want to walk in with a printout and play founder. Marcus let it sit. Then he said quietly, Where's the 47 million, Victoria? The call ended. He looked at the phone. Then he put the truck in gear. The building was 14 stories of glass on West Peachtree, and the sign out front said, Carter Sentinel Technologies in brushed steel letters that Marcus had personally argued about for 2 weeks in 2011 because the first design had been too tall and too proud. He parked in Visitor. That was the first thing. He noticed it and let it go. His reserved space had been reassigned 3 years ago, and he'd told them to do it no sense in a spot sitting empty. Fine. Good even. He walked in at 9:02 on a Tuesday morning with a manila folder under his arm and his old badge on a black lanyard, and the lobby was full of people going up. He got in line at the turnstile behind 2 young engineers arguing about a build. Tapped his badge. Red light. He tapped it again. Red light. They've been doing that all week, said the woman behind him, friendly, not looking up from her phone. Try the other one. He tried the other one. Red light. The guard at the podium looked over. Young. 25 maybe. Neck tattoo peeking above the collar. Name tag said T. Hollis. Sir, you gotta check in at the desk if you're a visitor. I'm not a visitor. Everybody's gotta check in at the desk. Marcus walked over, set the badge on the counter, face-up photograph and all. My badge should be in the system, he said. If it isn't, I'd appreciate it if you'd call up to the 12th floor. Hollis picked up the badge, looked at the photo, looked at Marcus, looked at the photo again. Then he typed. Then he stopped typing. He said. What's it say? It says, hold on. He typed again, turned the monitor slightly so Marcus couldn't see it. "Sir, can you step to the side for a second?" "What does it say?" "Sir, I just need you to step to the side." Marcus stepped to the side. He watched Hollis pick up the phone, turn his shoulder and speak into it in a low voice, and he watched Hollis's eyes come back to him twice while he was talking, and Marcus felt something cold move through his chest that he hadn't felt since a doctor came out into a waiting room in 2007 and didn't make eye contact. He knew. Standing right there in his own lobby at 9:04 in the morning, holding a folder full of routing numbers, Marcus Carter knew. They'd been waiting for him. Grace Alvarez had run the front desk since 2013. She'd been at Renee's memorial. She'd sent a card every year on the anniversary every year, 12 straight years, handwritten. When Naomi got into Emory, Grace sent a fruit basket that was 90% cantaloupe, and Marcus had called her personally to complain about it, and they'd laughed for 10 minutes. She came around the desk fast. "Mr. Carter?" "Morning, Grace." "What are you—" She stopped herself, lowered her voice. Her hands were shaking a little. "You're not supposed to be here." "Says who?" They sent a notice out Friday afternoon. Facilities, security bulletin." She glanced at Hollis, then back. "Your credentials were flagged." "Flagged as what?" Mr. Carter combed Grace. "Flagged as what?" Grace Alvarez looked at the man who had personally driven her to the hospital when her son broke his arm at the company picnic in 2016, and her eyes filled up. "Terminated for cause," she said. "And a note, do not admit under any circumstances. Contact corporate security immediately." Marcus nodded slowly. "Friday afternoon," he said. "Friday afternoon." 4 days ago, 4 days before he'd read page 40, which meant they hadn't done it because he found out. They'd done it because they knew he would. "Grace," he said, "I need you to do something for me. Mr. Carter, I can't. You're not going to do anything against anybody. I want you to go stand behind your desk, and I want you to write down the time. That's all. Write down what time it is right now, and write down what time it is when things happen, and put it in your pocket." She stared at him. "Please," Marcus said. Grace went back behind her desk and picked up a pen. They came out of the elevator bank 6 minutes later. 4 corporate security officers in navy blazers moving fast and spread out the way you move when you've rehearsed. Behind them, a man in a suit with a phone already up and recording Brendan Cole Communications. Marcus had approved his hire from a beach in 2019 without ever meeting him. And behind Cole, walking easy a step slower than everybody else, so that she'd arrive last and be the only thing anybody was looking at, Victoria Hayes. 51 years old, charcoal suit, not a hair out of place. She'd been at Renee's memorial too, the lobby noticed. That's the thing about lobbies, they're only quiet until they're not. Conversation died in a spreading circle. People stopped at the turnstiles. Up on the mezzanine, the coffee bar emptied against the glass railing, 20, 30, 50 people looking down. Phones came out. Marcus stood where he was, folder under his arm, and did not move a muscle. "Marcus," Victoria said, "you shouldn't have come." "Morning, Victoria. I need you to leave the building. I'd like to see the vendor file." "Marcus. Halcyon, Meridian, Ardent." He said the names clearly, and he said them loud enough. "Show me the onboarding packets and the W-9s and the certificates of insurance, and I'll walk out of here myself and apologize on the way." The head of security stepped forward. Big man, 50, flat gray eyes. Dale Krieg, hired 18 months ago. Marcus had never laid eyes on him in his life. "Sir, you need to exit the premises." "And who are you?" "Director of Corporate Security." "Then you work for me." "No, sir," Krieg said. "I don't." Marcus turned back to Victoria. "Say it in front of them," he said. "Whatever you're about to do, say it in front of all these people and be specific, because they're all recording and so am I." Victoria's face did something complicated. For 1 second, one single second that Marcus would think about many, many times later, she looked like a woman standing on a diving board realizing the pool was empty. Then she stepped up onto the low granite riser by the reception desk so everybody could see her, and she raised her voice to the entire lobby. 4 days ago, Victoria said, our security team identified an unauthorized extraction of proprietary source code from our secure development environment. The lobby went absolutely silent. Roughly 2 terabytes, she said. Core architecture for the Sentinel emergency platform. The credentials used were legacy founder-level credentials. She looked down at him. Marcus, where is the drive? Marcus said nothing. I want to give you the chance to hand it over right now in front of everyone, and we will handle this internally." "That's a lie," Marcus said. "Marcus, that's a lie, and you know it's a lie, and there are 400 people standing here who are going to remember which one of us was calm. Where is the drive, Marcus?" And that's when Krieg said, "Sir, we're going to need to search your person." Marcus turned his head. "You're going to need a warrant. You're on private property. I own the property. You're going to need to come with us." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Krieg reached for the folder. Marcus pulled it back, not fast, not violent, just a man moving his own property 6 inches away from a stranger's hand, and Brendan Cole said sharp, "He's resisting," and the whole thing came apart in about 4 seconds. There were 2 of them on his right arm before he'd finished turning around. "Don't," Marcus said. "Don't do that, don't put your hands." They put his chest against the reception desk. He heard Grace scream. He heard a woman on the mezzanine say, "Oh my God," into her phone. He heard somebody's coffee cup hit the floor and burst. His cheek went down onto the granite countertop he had chosen himself in 2011 from a slab in a warehouse in Tucker, Georgia, because Renee had liked the way the gray ran through it. And 140 pounds of somebody's knee went into the small of his back. "Stop resisting." "He's not resisting," Grace was shouting. "He's not resisting. He's not doing anything. Sir, stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Marcus said into the countertop. And he wasn't. That was the strange thing. That was the thing every single person in that lobby would say afterward in interviews and depositions, and to reporters and to their spouses at dinner for the rest of their lives. He didn't fight. 58 years old, 6'1", a man who'd carried Transformers up 3 flights of stairs at 40, he had every physical ability to fight and every legal right to be furious, and he did not do one thing except go loose in their hands and turn his head so he could keep talking. Because Marcus Carter had spent 30 years of his life learning one lesson the hard way, and the lesson was this: you do not win the fight in the room, you win it in the record. The metal touched his left wrist. Then the ratchet, that sound, that chick that everybody has heard 1,000 times on television, and nobody is ready for the first time it's on their own body. Then the right wrist. And Marcus Carter, founder, chairman, and 51% owner of Carter Sentinel Technologies, was standing in handcuffs on the floor of the building with his name on it, while 400 of his own employees filmed it from above. Somebody was crying, he could hear it. Somebody else was laughing, that high, awful, nervous laugh people do when they don't know what else to do with their body. Krieg said, "Take him out the north door." "No," Victoria said quickly. "Main entrance." Marcus lifted his head. He looked at her. She was still standing on the riser. She had not come down. And when his eyes found hers, she looked away, not at the ceiling, not at the floor, but at Brendan Cole's phone, checking the way you check a mirror. Main entrance. Not the loading dock, not the service corridor, not the quiet, dignified exit that any company on earth would use to remove a man who might be innocent. The main entrance, where the street was, where the sidewalk was, where anybody with a phone could get the shot with the steel letters in the frame. And Marcus understood the entire thing at once. It was never about the drive. It was never about source code or a search or a security incident. It was about the photograph. Somebody somewhere needed a picture of Marcus Carter in handcuffs, needed it badly enough to burn 400 witnesses to get it, which meant somebody had something coming up, a vote. "Victoria," he said. She didn't answer. "Victoria, look at me." Krieg's hand closed on his arm to move him. "Hold on," Marcus said, and something in his voice did it some frequency out of an old life because Krieg actually stopped. "Give me 30 seconds. 30 seconds, and I'll walk out that door on my own feet and I won't say another word." Krieg glanced at Victoria. Victoria and Marcus watched her do it, glanced at Brendan Cole. Cole nodded slightly. She asked permission, Marcus thought. The CEO of my company just asked her communications director for permission, so she's not the top of this. 30 seconds, Krieg said. Marcus straightened up as much as a man in cuffs can straighten. He turned to face the lobby, the turnstiles, the mezzanine, the 50 phones, the young engineers who'd been arguing about a build 10 minutes ago and were now standing there white-faced with their hands over their mouths. He didn't make a speech. He'd think about that later, too. He had one shot at 400 people and every dramatic thing in the world available to him, and what came out of his mouth was procedure. "My name is Marcus Carter," he said. "I'm the founder of this company, and I own 51% of it. I came here this morning to ask about $47 million paid to 3 vendors that I believe do not exist. Halcyon Grid, Meridian Logistics, Ardent Facility Services. Write those names down. He heard it. All over the lobby, the small sound of 100 people typing at once. I have not been arrested. No law enforcement officer is present. These are private security employees, and I have not consented to a search. He turned his head toward Grace's desk. The lobby cameras are running. There are cameras at the turnstile, the elevator bank, the north corridor, and the exterior canopy, because I signed the purchase order for every one of them. The retention policy is 90 days. He looked directly at Krieg. Preserve all of it, Marcus said. Not just today. Pull the full chain server logs, badge logs, and the access control audit trail going back to Friday at noon. Because at some point between Friday at noon and this morning, somebody flagged my credentials, and there is a name attached to that action, and it is sitting in a database on the 8th floor right now. Krieg's jaw moved. And whatever device you say you found, Marcus said, log the serial number, photograph it, note who touched it when and where it's been since. Because if it turns out that drive was never in my possession, then the only question left is, who did have it? And every hour that thing sits in an unlogged desk drawer is an hour that helps me and hurts you. He let that sit. Then he looked up at the mezzanine, all those faces, all those phones, and his voice changed. It got lower, almost gentle. To everybody standing up there, he said, I know what this looks like. I know some of you never met me. Some of you have been here 2 years and I'm just a photograph in the lobby and a name on your paycheck. He paused. But some of you were here in 2011. Some of you were here when we had 90 people and a leaking roof, and you remember I never once made you go home when your kid was sick. Somewhere in the crowd, a man's voice cracked out, Mr. Carter. Don't, Marcus said immediately. Don't say anything. Don't put your job in this. Just don't delete the video. He turned back around. That's it, he said. That's my 30 seconds. They walked him toward the doors, the heels of 400 people's silence following him across 60 feet of polished floor. Grace Alvarez with both hands over her mouth. Brendan Cole walking backward in front of him, filming the whole way, phone up like he was covering a red carpet. And Marcus, in his own building, in his own lobby, under his own name in brushed steel, kept his head up and did not look at the floor one single time. He thought about Naomi and her scrubs asleep by now. I thought about how she'd find out. He thought about the fact that it would be a video, and it would be on a phone, and somebody would send it to her while she was sleeping off a 14-hour shift, and she would wake up to her father in handcuffs. That was the only moment his composure came anywhere close to breaking, and nobody saw it because it happened behind his eyes. Doors, Krieg said. Cole hurried ahead to get the shot from outside, and the glass doors of Carter Sentinel Technologies swung open before anybody touched them. 6 people came through, moving fast and hard against the flow, and the first thing anybody in that lobby saw was the badge on a chain against a navy jacket, and the second thing they saw was the folded blue paper in the woman's left hand. She was about 45, gray coat, federal ID. She stopped 4 feet from Marcus Carter, and every single thing about her body language changed at once: the walk, the shoulders, the hand with the warrant in it, dropping slowly to her side. She had come to search this building. She had spent 11 months building a case, and she had a plan for the next 4 hours, and none of it involved the man standing in front of her, because she had met him before, in a parking deck in Rockville, Maryland at 11 o'clock at night, 9 years ago, when he was the only source she had, and the whole country's emergency network was one exploit away from going dark. Elena Brooks stared at the handcuffs on Marcus Carter's wrists. Then she looked past him at Victoria Hayes, still standing up on the granite riser, and the lobby got so quiet you could hear the air handlers. Somebody, Elena Brooks said, is going to tell me why that man is in restraints. Nobody answered her. That was the thing about the lobby of Carter Sentinel Technologies at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. 400 people, 50 phones, 6 federal agents, and not one human being willing to open their mouth. Elena Brooks let the silence run. She was good at that. She'd spent 19 years letting silence run in rooms full of men who were used to talking. I'll ask it a different way, she said. Which one of you put those on him? Dale Krieg cleared his throat. Ma'am, we're corporate security. We detained an individual who was refusing to... Are you a sworn officer? No, ma'am. Do you have arrest authority in the state of Georgia? We have authority to detain on private property. Take them off. Ma'am. Take them off. Elena said, "or I will have one of these 6 agents take them off, and then we'll spend the next 2 hours discussing whether what you just did meets the elements of false imprisonment under Georgia Code 16541, which, and I want to be very clear, because I don't think you're hearing me, is a felony." Krieg looked at Victoria. Marcus saw it. Everybody saw it. The head of corporate security, a man built like a door standing in the middle of his own lobby, turning his head to check with somebody before he'd take a set of handcuffs off a 58-year-old man. "Do it," Victoria said. The ratchet went the other way twice. Marcus brought his hands around in front of him and rubbed the left wrist with the right thumb. Slow the way a man does when he's giving his hands something to do so the rest of him can stay still. "Mr. Carter," Elena said, "are you injured?" "No." "Do you want medical attention?" "No, ma'am." "Do you want to file a complaint right now on the record with a federal officer as a witness?" Marcus looked at her for a second. "Not yet," he said. Elena's mouth did something that was not quite a smile. "Okay." Then she turned and held up the folded blue paper, and her voice changed entirely. It went flat and loud and public, the courtroom voice, the one that carried to the back of the mezzanine without ever sounding like shouting. "My name is Elena Brooks. I'm an assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. I have a warrant signed this morning by a federal magistrate authorizing the search and seizure of financial records, communications, and server data belonging to Carter Sentinel Technologies." She raised her chin. "Everyone in this building is going to stay exactly where they are. Nobody logs off, nobody closes a laptop, nobody touches a phone except to put it face down on the nearest flat surface. If you are currently deleting something, I want you to understand that we already know because we've had a warrant on the outbound traffic for 6 weeks." That last part was a bluff. Marcus knew it was a bluff about half a second after she said it because he knew exactly what 6 weeks of outbound traffic on that architecture would have cost to warehouse, and no U.S. Attorney's Office in America had that budget. He also watched 3 people on the mezzanine physically flinch. "She's not fishing," he thought. "She's shaking the tree." Victoria came down off the riser at last. She came down smooth hand, already out, the whole apparatus reassembling itself. "Ms. Brooks, Victoria Hayes, I'm the chief executive. I want you to know that this company will cooperate fully and completely, whatever you need." Elena did not shake her hand. "Ms. Hayes," she said, 90 seconds ago you had your founder in handcuffs in front of 400 witnesses. Would you like to tell me about that first, or would you like to tell me about it later in a room with your attorney? There was a credible security incident. Then you called the police." Victoria hesitated. "You called the police," Elena repeated. 2 terabytes of proprietary source code walks out of a company that holds federal emergency infrastructure contracts, and you called the FBI because you're legally required to report a breach on a federal contract within 72 hours. She tilted her head. "That report is going to have a timestamp on it, Ms. Hayes. Would you like to tell me what it says?" Silence. "When did you file it?" "We were following our internal escalation protocol." "When did you file it?" "We hadn't yet filed. 4 days, Elena said. 4 days you sat on a national security breach. Either it never happened, or you committed a separate federal offense sitting on it. Pick one out loud in front of everybody." Brendan Cole stepped forward with his phone still up. "I'm going to have to ask you to—" Elena looked at the phone, then at Cole. "Are you recording a federal agent executing a warrant?" "I'm the communications director. I have a right." "Then you're a custodian of evidence," she said. "That device is now in the scope. Agent Ruiz." A younger agent stepped in with a bag already open. Cole's face came apart in stages, which Marcus found interesting. First the outrage, then the calculation. Then underneath both of those, for maybe a quarter of a second, something a whole lot more like panic. "That's my personal phone." "Then you shouldn't have used it to film a detention on company property," Elena said. "Ruiz, tag it. Ms. Hayes, I want your general counsel down here in 5 minutes, and I want the CIO in 10, and nobody goes near the 8th floor. She turned back to Marcus, and everything in her voice dropped about 40 decibels. "Mr. Carter, would you walk with me?" They didn't go far. There was a small conference room off the lobby, the one with the ugly abstract painting that Marcus had never liked and never once mentioned to anybody, and Elena shut the door and stood with her back to it for a long moment without saying anything at all. Then she said, 9 years. 9 years. You look older. I am older. You look older than 9 years, Marcus. He sat down. His hands were shaking now, finally, now that there was nobody to see it, and he put them flat on the table to stop it. "You want the truth," he said. "I didn't sleep last night, or the one before it." Elena sat down across from him. She was quiet a second. "You never told them," she said. "Did you?" "No. Not one person in this building knows." "My daughter doesn't know," Marcus said. "My best friend of 22 years doesn't know. My attorney doesn't know." He looked up. "You know how many people know 4. You, the 2 agents who ran me, and a federal judge who's been dead since 2021. And now every one of them out there is going to be asking why an AUSA walked into a lobby and knew your name." "Yeah," Marcus said. "I noticed that too." Elena leaned back and rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands, which Marcus took as the single most alarming thing that had happened all morning, because in 9 years he had never once seen that woman look tired. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this fast because I've got a floor full of people upstairs who are all going to lawyer up in the next 20 minutes. Tell me what you came here to do this morning." "Ask about $47 million. "Say the names." "Halcyon Grid Solutions, Meridian Logistics Partners, Ardent Facility Services." Elena did not react. She had a very good face, but her hands had been resting on the table, and Marcus watched the fingers of her right hand curl in slightly, and he'd been reading people across tables since before she had a law degree. "You know those names," he said. "Marcus. You've had those names for a while." "Marcus, I can't." 11 months. Elena stopped. "How did you get 11 months?" she said. "You said 6 weeks on the outbound traffic, and I could tell you were lying about the 6 weeks, which means you weren't lying about having something. And a magistrate doesn't sign a warrant this broad on a fresh case. So you've been building it a while, and you came in today the day after the Q3 ledger goes out to the board, which means either you're psychic or somebody inside this building is talking to you." He paused. "Same somebody who texted me at 4:41 this morning and told me to look at pages 40 through 61. Elena stared at him. "Say that again," she said quietly. "Somebody texted me at 4:41 this morning. From what number? Atlanta area code. Told me to look at the routing numbers instead of the names and then delete the thread. Did you delete it?" "Ma'am," Marcus said, "I have been handing over evidence to federal prosecutors since 2016. What do you think?" He put the phone on the table. Elena looked at it like it was a live animal. "That's not my source," she said. Marcus felt the floor shift about a quarter inch. "What? I have a source in this building. I've had one for 9 months. That is not my source's number." She pulled out her own phone, checked something, put it away. "Which means there are 2 people inside Carter Sentinel who decided independently that they couldn't live with this anymore, and one of them just walked you into an ambush without knowing it. Or knowing it exactly. Or that," Elena agreed. Marcus sat back. "Elena," he said, "what's happening to my company?" She looked at him for a long moment. "How much do you actually know?" she said. $47 million out the door through 3 shells. 3 approval gates all failed at once. My credentials flagged Friday afternoon, 4 days before I found anything, which means they knew the ledger was going to trip me before it tripped me." He counted them off on the table with 2 fingers calm as a man doing a crossword. "Victoria says there are things in motion I'm not read in on, and whoever set this morning up wanted me walked out the front door instead of the loading dock." He looked up. "So somebody needed a photograph, which means there's a vote." Elena Brooks was quiet for a second. "You know," she said, "in 9 years I forgot how much I hate talking to you." "There's a vote. There's a vote. When 9 days. Marcus closed his eyes. "Say it." "Special shareholder meeting called under the emergency provision in your own bylaws," Elena said. "The stated purpose is to approve a strategic combination. Carter Sentinel merges into a holding entity, existing management stays on, and the technology assets, including the Sentinel emergency platform and all of its source architecture, get transferred into a new corporate parent." She paused. "Which is domiciled in the Cayman Islands and controlled through a Singapore holding company." Marcus opened his eyes. "No," he said. "Marcus, no, that's not Elena. That platform runs 911 dispatch failover in 31 states. It runs the backup power sequencing for 1,100 hospitals. There are federal certifications on that code that are physically impossible to move offshore. There's a source code escrow with the government. There are audit requirements." "There are audit requirements," Elena said, "that terminate on change of control." Marcus stopped. What? Section 9 of the Master Federal Agreement. On a qualifying change of control, the existing oversight framework sunsets and the successor entity has 18 months to recertify under a new framework. She let that land. 18 months, Marcus, where nobody is looking at that code. Not the government, not the IG, not you. The room got very quiet. I wrote Section 9, Marcus said. I know you did. I wrote it in 2009. I wrote it so that if I ever got hit by a bus, whoever bought this company would have a runway to stand the compliance program back up instead of a cliff. He was staring at the table. I wrote the whole. Yes, and somebody read it. Somebody read all of it, Elena said. Somebody has been reading your bylaws, your governance documents, and your federal agreements for probably 2 years, and they built the entire thing to fit through the gaps you left because you left them yourself in 2009 for the best reasons a man ever had. Marcus put both hands over his mouth and sat there. Who? He said finally. I'm not going to say the name yet. Elena. I'm not going to say the name yet because you're going to walk out of here and do something stupid. I'm not going to do anything stupid. You drove down here alone this morning to ask a question, Elena said. Walter Briggs told you to bring a lawyer and you didn't bring a lawyer. Marcus's head came up. How do you know that? Elena didn't answer that either. Okay, Marcus said slowly. Okay, so you've got a source and you've got a second source you didn't know about. And now you've got a third thing, which is that you know what a 71-year-old retired controller said to me over eggs 2 hours ago? He nodded. You have a wire. Marcus. You have a wire on somebody, and either Walter's phone is in the net or I am. I'm going to say this once, Elena said, and then we're going to move on. You are not a target. You have never been a target. I flew back from Washington last night specifically because I was afraid something was going to happen to you this morning, and I got here 11 minutes late, and I'm going to be thinking about those 11 minutes for a long time. Marcus looked at her, and something in him let go a little. They put my face on a counter, Elena. I know. Grace Alvarez has been sending my family a card every year since my wife died, and she had to watch that. I know. My daughter's asleep right now. His voice finally cracked just at the edge, one syllable. She worked 14 hours in an ICU, and she's asleep, and there are 50 videos, and she's going to wake up to it. Elena Brooks reached across the table and put her hand flat on the table next to his, not touching just there. Then call her before she wakes up, she said. Right now. That's the only thing in this building that can't wait, he called. It went to voicemail because of course it did, and Marcus sat there in a conference room he'd paid for and listened to his daughter's recorded voice, telling him to leave a message, and he said, Baby, it's Dad. Something happened at the office this morning. I'm fine. I am completely fine. Nobody's hurt, and I need you to hear it from me before you see it. Call me the second you get this. I love you. He hung up. Then he sat there another second and said, That's the worst voicemail I've ever left in my life. And Elena said, It's not. And neither of them elaborated. There was a knock. The agent named Ruiz put his head in. Ma'am, you're going to want the 8th floor. What was on the 8th floor was an evidence bag. It was sitting in the second drawer of a desk in the corporate security suite, and it had been sitting there since Friday, and it contained one encrypted external drive. And Elena Brooks looked at it for about 4 seconds through the plastic before she started asking questions in a voice that made a 26-year-old security analyst physically sit down. Who logged this? Mr. Krieg brought it in. Is there a chain of custody form? We don't really. Is there a form? No, ma'am. Where's the serial number recorded? I think it's just in the bag. Was this drive imaged? No, ma'am. Was it powered on? The analyst hesitated. And that hesitation was in Elena Brooks's professional experience worth roughly 11 years of somebody's life. Once, he said, Friday, to confirm the contents. By who? Mr. Cole asked me to. Elena turned her head very slowly. The communications director, she said, asked you to power on the sole piece of physical evidence in a corporate theft investigation. He said he needed to know if it was real before they made a decision about disclosure. What did you see? Directory structure, file names, Sentinel Core build folders, architecture docs. It looked legit. Did you open one? I opened 3. And the kid's ears went red. They were real files, he said, but the build tags were old, like old, version 6.2. Marcus standing in the doorway with his hands in his pockets, because there was nowhere in that room he was allowed to touch, said 6.2. Yes, sir. Son, look at me. The analyst looked. When did we sunset 6.2? I've only been here since March of 2021, Marcus said. We deprecated the entire 6 branch in March of 2021 and burned it out of the repo in July because it had a certificate handling flaw that would have failed recertification. There is not one production system in America running 6.2. There hasn't been for 5 years. He looked at Elena. That's not stolen source code. That's a bag of dead leaves. Elena said, where would somebody get a copy of a 5-year-old build that was burned out of the repository? Nobody answered. I'll help you, she said. There are 2 places, a cold archive which requires executive-level authorization to access, or a laptop that never got wiped. She looked at Marcus. Which one has a name on it? Both of them, Marcus said. Cold archive pulls are logged with a requester ID. Every laptop that comes off inventory has a decommission ticket with a signature. Then that's the whole thing, Elena said. That's the whole case right there, and it took 19 minutes. And that was the strange part. That was the part Marcus kept turning over for the rest of that day and most of that night, because it was 19 minutes. The evidence against him wasn't just weak, it was insulting. Badge logs pulled at 10:40 showed that Marcus Carter had not entered the secure development floor in 4 years, 6 months, and 11 days, had not badged into the building at all since the Christmas party, and had at the exact hour the alleged extraction supposedly occurred, been sitting in a Kroger parking lot in Decatur with his phone pinging one tower for 50 minutes because Naomi had called him crying about a patient she'd lost, and he'd stayed on the line until she stopped. The whole thing fell apart in an afternoon, which was exactly what bothered him. He said it out loud at 4:15 that afternoon in a rented conference room 3 blocks away with Elena on one side of the table and a laptop full of badge logs in front of him. They didn't build this to survive, he said. Elena looked up. Say more. Look at it. He turned the screen. No chain of custody. Dead build. Badge logs that clear me in 30 seconds. A phone that puts me 11 miles away. Elena, a competent framing takes 6 months, and it takes a technical person, and this one wouldn't survive one motion to dismiss. Because it was never going to court. It was never going to court, Marcus said. It was never going to a jury. It was never even going to a police report. That's why she never called the police. That's why nothing got filed. There's no downstream. There's no back half. He put a finger on the table. This thing had a 9-day shelf life. It only had to hold up until the vote. Elena nodded slowly. And then it doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if it's true at all. Marcus stood up and walked to the window and turned around. Understand what a proxy fight actually is. It's not a courtroom. It's not about proof. It's 400 employees with shares and a couple thousand retail holders and 11 institutions, and every one of those institutions has a governance committee that has to decide in 9 days whether the founder objecting to this merger is a man protecting critical infrastructure or an unstable 60-year-old with a grudge who had to be physically removed from the building. He let it sit. They don't need a conviction, he said. They need a thumbnail. Elena was quiet for a moment. Marcus, she said, I need to tell you the rest of it now. All right. The $47 million isn't the crime, it's the receipt. He turned around. Halcyon, Meridian, and Ardent have made 22 outbound payments in the last 14 months, Elena said. 6 of them went to a political consultancy, 4 went to a reputation management firm in Virginia, 3 went to a boutique proxy solicitation shop, and 9 of them went to individuals. She looked at him. 2 of those individuals sit on your board of directors. Marcus did not move. Say the names. I can't. Elena. I can't, and here's why. She stood up too. Because you have 9 days in a proxy fight, and the second you say a board member's name out loud without an indictment behind it, their lawyer files a defamation action, and you spend 6 of your 9 days in a deposition instead of on the phone with institutional shareholders. That is not a hypothetical. That is the play. That is what they want you to do. Marcus stared at her. That's why the handcuffs, he said slowly. It's not just the picture. Go on. It's the anger. They want me loud. They want me on television saying wild things about people with no evidence in the 9 days when I don't have the evidence yet. He almost laughed. They studied me. They studied me, and they got it wrong, but they studied me. How'd they get it wrong? Marcus looked at her. They think I'm a founder, he said. I'm an engineer. You don't fix a system by yelling at it. And that was the moment his phone rang. Naomi. He picked it up so fast he almost dropped it. "Baby, is it real?" She was crying. She was trying not to, and it was not working. "Dad, is it real? It's got Dad. It's got 2 million views. It's on the news. They're calling it the Carter Sentinel founder. And there's a picture of your face on the desk." "Naomi, your face was on the desk, Dad. Baby, listen to me. There's a guy with his knee on your back and you're not even—" Her voice broke completely. "Why weren't you fighting? Why weren't you fighting, Dad? You just let them—" Marcus closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against the window glass. "Because if I'd fought," he said, "the video would have been about the fight." Silence on the line. "Naomi, look at the video again, later. Not now, but later. And count how many times I look at the camera." "What?" "Count how many times I look at a camera. It's 0. He kept his voice very even. "Every time you see a man in a video looking at the camera, he's performing. I wasn't performing. I gave them nothing to cut. Every second of that footage is a calm man asking to preserve evidence while 4 security guards put him on a counter, and in about 6 days, that is going to be the most valuable 90 seconds of video anybody has ever recorded of me." Naomi was quiet for a long time. "You planned that," she said. "No, baby, I didn't plan any of it." He opened his eyes. "I just knew what to do because I've been getting ready for something like this for a long, long time, and I never told you." "Dad, when you get off shift tonight," he said, "come to the house, not the apartment, the house, and I'm going to tell you something about your mother, and about 2016, and about why we moved that one time when you were in 8th grade, and I told you it was because of the school district." He heard her stop breathing. "It wasn't the school district," Naomi said. "No, baby," Marcus said. "It wasn't the school district." I was still holding the phone when Walter Briggs called 11 minutes later and started talking before Marcus finished saying hello. "I've seen it 4 times. Walt, 4 times, Marcus. My wife's crying in the kitchen. My granddaughter sent it to me. My granddaughter, she's 19. She's in Ohio. She sent it to me and said, 'Grandpa, isn't this your old job?'" Walter's voice was shaking with something that wasn't sadness. "I told you to bring a lawyer." "You did." "I told you at breakfast." "You did, Walt. So now you're going to listen to me." A chair scraped somewhere in Georgia. "You've got 9 days, and I know you've got 9 days because Louise's brother-in-law holds 400 shares, and he got a proxy card in the mail on Saturday." Marcus straightened up. "Saturday. Saturday. Walt, the meeting notice went out Saturday. Postmarked Thursday in the box Saturday." Marcus turned to Elena and mouthed Thursday. Elena's face changed. "Walt, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Marcus said. "Do not throw away that envelope. Do not let Louise's brother-in-law throw away that envelope. I need the envelope, the card, the insert, and the return sheet, and I need to know exactly what date is printed in the fine print at the bottom of the card." "Why?" "Because the notice was mailed Thursday," Marcus said, "and my credentials were flagged Friday and I was put in handcuffs on Tuesday. And a proxy solicitation costs about $400,000 to print and mail, and nobody spends $400,000 on Thursday unless they already know what Tuesday's going to look like." The line was quiet. "Lord," Walter said. "Yeah." "Marcus, that means—" "It means the handcuffs weren't a reaction," Marcus said. "It means the handcuffs were on the calendar." He hung up and stood there in a rented conference room while the light went long and orange across the carpet, and Elena Brooks watched him and didn't say anything because she had been doing this for 19 years and she knew what a man looks like about 4 seconds before he stops being a victim. "Elena," he said. "Yeah. When you were sitting outside this building this morning waiting to serve that warrant before you walked in, what was your plan?" "Seize the servers, image everything, interview the CFO." "And how long would that take realistically? Forensics review and out the other side with charges." Elena exhaled. 8 months, optimistically. 6 if I get lucky and somebody flips fast. "And the vote is in 9 days." "Yes." "So the criminal case saves my reputation," Marcus said. 8 months after they've already moved that platform offshore, gutted the safeguards and sold it to whoever's next. Elena didn't answer, which was the answer. "Then the law isn't going to get there in time," Marcus said. "Marcus, don't. I'm not saying anything crazy. I'm saying a true thing." He picked up his jacket off the chair. "You do your job. Do it exactly right. Don't cut one corner because in 8 months somebody's going to need to go to prison, and I want that case to be airtight. But you can't stop that vote. Nobody can stop that vote except me, and I've got 9 days, and right now the only thing I have is a printout and a video of my own face on a countertop." "You have 51%, Elena said. Marcus stopped with his jacket half on, and then for the first time all day, he laughed one short, quiet, humorless breath. "No," he said, "I don't." Elena Brooks sat up. "What?" "I have 51% of the founding class," Marcus said. "Class A, 10 votes a share." He put the jacket on. "In 2019, they came to me with an employee equity expansion. Broader ownership, more shares to the rank and file dilute the founder block, so the company doesn't look like a one-man risk to institutional investors. I thought it was a good idea. I still think it was a good idea." He picked up the printouts. There was a conversion clause about 11 pages in. Class A converts to common on any qualifying transaction approved by a supermajority of the independent directors. Elena stared at him. "How much do you have on the day of the vote?" "If the independent directors certify the transaction," Marcus said, 22%. The room was silent. "So they don't need to beat you," Elena said slowly. "They already beat me," Marcus said. "In 2019, on page 11, and I signed it because a very well-dressed woman I trusted with my daughter's college fund told me it was good for the employees, and I didn't read past page 9. He picked up his keys. "Elena," he said, "you told me you wouldn't give me the name." "I'm not going to." "You don't have to." Marcus stood in the doorway. "There are exactly 4 people on Earth with the capital, the offshore structure, and the appetite to move a certified emergency platform out of federal oversight. 3 of them are foreign, and none of them get a Cayman entity past CFI-US in 9 days. Which leaves one man, and he's American, and he did the exact same thing to a water utility company in Nevada in 2017 and walked away clean because the founder got angry on television and made himself look crazy." Elena Brooks said nothing at all, which was Marcus thought the loudest thing anybody had said to him all day. "Nathan Blackwell," he said. And Elena still didn't answer, but she reached over, closed her laptop, and looked at him with an expression Marcus had only seen once before in a parking deck in Rockville, Maryland, 9 years earlier at 11 o'clock at night. "Marcus," she said, "go see your daughter." The house on Windsor Trace still had the same porch light Marcus had installed himself in 2006, and Naomi Carter sat under it at 11:40 that night, still in scrubs, holding a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. "Say it again," she said. "Baby." "Say it again, Dad, because I want to make sure I heard it." Marcus sat down in the other chair. "In 2015, he said, I found out that one of our subcontractors was putting a back door into the emergency dispatch failover module. A back door. A maintenance channel that wasn't in the spec and wasn't in the documentation. It let somebody get into the dispatch layer of any system running that billed without leaving a log." He turned the coffee cup in his hands. It was in 4,100 installations, hospitals, county 911 centers, 3 state emergency operations centers. Why would somebody do that? Because a contract to fix a nationwide vulnerability is worth about $200 million, Marcus said. And if you're the only one who knows where the vulnerability is, you're the only one who can bid on fixing it. Naomi put the coffee down. "They built the hole so they could sell the patch." "That's right. Dad, that's—" She stopped. "People would have died." "People would have died," Marcus agreed. "Not right away. That's the thing nobody understands about infrastructure. Nobody dies the day it breaks. They die 11 minutes later in an ambulance because dispatch couldn't route around a bridge closure. They die in a stairwell in a hospital that lost door control. It's never one big thing. It's 4,000 small things that all go wrong on the same Tuesday." Naomi was staring at him. "So what did you do?" "I called the FBI." "Utah," she laughed once and it came out wrong, closer to a sob. "You just called them." "I got a number off a public website, and I called it from a gas station in Marietta, and I said my name is Marcus Carter, and I need to talk to somebody about a federal contractor." He shook his head. "Took 4 weeks before anybody called me back. Then a woman named Elena Brooks called, and she was 36 years old, and nobody in her office believed her either." "That's the woman from today." "That's the woman from today." Naomi sat forward with her elbows on her knees. "How long did it take?" 14 months. 14 months. "I built the technical case," Marcus said, "because the government could subpoena the code, but they couldn't read it. Nobody could read it. So for 14 months, I got up at 3 in the morning. That's when it started, baby. That's why I still wake up at 3. And I documented every call, every branch, every commit, every place that channel touched. And I wrote it in language a jury could follow. Then I went to work and coached your robotics team and made your lunch and told you everything was fine. You were 47. I was 47. And your mom was 8 years gone, Marcus said. And that's the only reason I could do it. Because if she'd been alive, I'd have had to ask her and she'd have said yes, and then I'd have had to watch her be scared for 14 months. Naomi wiped her face with the back of her wrist. 8th grade, she said. Yeah. We moved in the middle of 8th grade. You said it was the school district. You swore it was the school district. Dad, I was so mad at you I didn't talk to you for 11 days, Marcus said. You didn't talk to me for 11 days and you ate dinner in your room and I let you, because there was no version of that conversation where you got to stay mad and also got to sleep at night. Why did we move? Marcus was quiet for a second. Somebody took photographs of you, he said, at your school from a car and mailed them to the house with no note. Naomi's mouth opened. Nothing came out. 26 photographs, Marcus said. You in the pickup line, you at the bus stop, you in the parking lot with Dana Mitchell laughing about something. And I sat in the kitchen and looked at them and then I called Elena and she said, "Do you want to stop?" He looked at his hands. And I sat there for about an hour and a half thinking about it. But you didn't stop. No, baby, I didn't stop. He looked over at her. I moved you 11 miles and I put a camera on the house and I told you it was the school district and I finished it. And 31 people were charged, and the contractor doesn't exist anymore. And there's a version of that dispatch code running in 31 states tonight that doesn't have a hole in it. Naomi sat there under the porch light for a long time. Dad? Yeah. You never told anybody? No. Not Walter, not Victoria. Nobody knew you were a... She stopped on the word. Whistleblower, Marcus said. Say it, it's not a dirty word. Nobody knew, Naomi said. So for 11 years, everybody in that building thought you were just some rich guy who got tired and went home. Marcus didn't say anything. They thought you quit, she said, and her voice cracked wide open on it. Dad, I thought you quit. I used to be embarrassed. She put her hand over her mouth. In college, when people asked what my dad did, I said he used to run a company and they'd go used to and I'd change the subject. I was embarrassed for you and you let me be. Naomi, you let me be embarrassed for 9 years so I wouldn't be scared for one. Marcus looked out at the yard. That was the trade, he said. I'd make it again. Naomi got up, crossed the porch, and put her arms around her father's neck from behind the chair, hard the way she used to when she was 7 and had a nightmare. And Marcus Carter, who had not cried in front of his daughter since the day of the funeral, sat very still and let her. Okay, she said finally into his shoulder. Okay, so what do we do? Dad, I swear to God. Marcus almost smiled. There's 9 days, he said. 8 now. So what do you have? A printout, a video, and 22% of a company I own 51% of. That's not nothing. Baby, that's very close to nothing. Naomi came around and sat on the porch rail in front of him, arms folded, and she looked so much like Renee in that moment that Marcus had to look at the floor. Then get more, she said. The phone rang at 6:12 the next morning. Same Atlanta number. Marcus answered on the first ring and said nothing. Neither did she. 8-9 seconds of a woman breathing on an open line. Are you alone? She said finally. I'm alone. They took my badge yesterday afternoon. They said it was a system-wide credential audit. It wasn't. They took 4 badges and all 4 of us signed the same compliance memo in April. Marcus sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. Sophia, he said. The line went dead quiet. How? She said. Because you told me to look at routing numbers instead of names, Marcus said, and there are maybe 6 people in that building who'd think of it that way, and 5 of them work for the CFO, and the CFO signed those vendors. He kept his voice low and even. And because in 2018 you came into my office with a 9-page memo about a distributor in Ohio, and you wouldn't leave until I read all 9 pages. Sophia Reed made a sound that was half a laugh and half something worse. You remember that? You were right about Ohio. I've been right about a lot of things, Mr. Carter. Her voice was shaking now. That's the problem. I've been right about a lot of things, and I sat on my hands for 2 years, and I watched you get put on a counter yesterday, and my son is 9, and I have a mortgage, and I have been telling myself for 2 years that I was being smart. Sophia, I filed 4 memos. 4. Escalated to the audit committee, which is what the policy says, and every single one came back with the same 3 sentences reviewed. No action warranted. Matter closed. She was crying now, angry crying, the kind that makes a person's words come faster. The same 3 sentences, Mr. Carter, word for word, 4 times over 18 months. Do you know what that means? It means nobody read them. It means somebody did read them, Sophia said, and wrote the same reply every time so it would look like a process. Marcus closed his eyes. Where are you right now? My car. Where? A Publix parking lot in Sandy Springs. I've been here since 4. Sophia, listen to me. Marcus stood up. Do you have anything with you? Long pause. I have everything, she said. They met at 9 in the lawyer's office downtown because Marcus had finally 3 days late done what Walter Briggs told him to do at breakfast. Sophia Reed was 44 years old, and she put a canvas grocery bag on the conference table and did not let go of the handles for about 10 seconds. Before I open this, she said, I need to know something. Ask me. If this goes bad, what happens to me? Marcus looked at Elena Brooks, who had driven over from the federal building and was sitting at the end of the table with her hands folded. Ms. Reed, Elena said, if you're providing information about a securities fraud to the government, there are statutory protections. Sarbanes-Oxley, Dodd-Frank. Retaliation against you becomes its own federal offense, and frankly, it's the easiest one to prove. That's the law answer. Yes. I want the real answer. Elena didn't blink. The real answer is that the law protects you and the industry doesn't. You will probably never work in corporate compliance in this city again. Sophia nodded slowly. Thank you. For what? For not lying to me. Everybody else in that building has been lying to me for 2 years. She opened the bag. It took 1 hour and 40 minutes to go through it, and by the end of it, Marcus Carter had stopped taking notes because his hand wouldn't stay steady. 19 invoices from Ardent Facility Services, all for site readiness work at locations. Sophia had physically verified she'd driven to 6 of them on her own weekends with her 9-year-old in the back seat, where no work had been performed, and in 2 cases, no building existed. A Meridian Logistics Services agreement with a signature page that had been lifted from a completely different contract because the scanned artifact of a coffee ring appeared on both. And the vendor master file access log, which showed that all 3 companies had been entered into the system by the same user account in an 11-day window in March at 11:40 p.m., 12:15 a.m., and 1:03 a.m., respectively. Whose account? Marcus said. A procurement analyst named Dev Raman. Was it him? He was in Mumbai, Sophia said, at his sister's wedding, for 19 days. He didn't have a laptop. Elena wrote something down. Somebody used his credentials, Marcus said. Somebody with domain admin, Sophia said, which is 4 people. Marcus sat back. Sophia, the audit committee replies. The 3 sentences. Who signed them? She hesitated. That's the part I can't prove, she said. I don't need you to prove it. I need you to say it. Robert Ambrose. Marcus went very still. Elena Brooks's pen stopped moving. Bob Ambrose, Marcus said. Yes, sir. Bob Ambrose chairs the audit committee and sits as an independent director. He heard his own voice go somewhere far away. Sophia, I've known Bob Ambrose since 2004. He gave us our first line of credit when nobody else in Georgia would touch us. He came to my wife's funeral. I know. He held my daughter's hand at my wife's funeral. She was 4 years old. Sophia Reed looked at the table. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Elena said quietly. That's one of the 2. Marcus turned. The board members, on your list of 9 individuals, Ambrose is one of them. I didn't say that. Elena. I didn't say that, Elena repeated, and I need you to understand why I'm not going to. Because when this becomes a proxy fight and opposing counsel is going to depose you, and they are going to ask you under oath whether a federal prosecutor gave you names, and you are going to answer honestly because you're constitutionally incapable of doing anything else, and the answer needs to be no. Marcus stared at her a moment. Then he nodded once. Understood. But Elena said if a man were to independently review 18 months of audit committee correspondence that a compliance officer lawfully retained under document preservation rules and draw his own conclusions. Understood, Marcus said again. Sophia Reed looked back and forth between them like a woman watching a language she didn't speak. There's one more thing, she said, and it's the reason I called you at 4 a.m. instead of going straight to the government. Go ahead. Everything in this bag is derivative. It's invoices and access logs and my own notes. A good lawyer will say I fabricated all of it. What we don't have is the approval chain who authorized the disbursements, who overrode the 3-gate control, and who suppressed my memos before they hit the committee packet. She put both hands flat on the table. That data doesn't exist in the ERP anymore. It was purged in a system migration in January. Purged, Marcus repeated. Yes. By who? IT, under a records retention policy update approved by, she checked her own notes and her jaw tightened, the audit committee. Marcus started to laugh. It was not a good laugh. Elena looked up sharply. Marcus. No, it's... He rubbed his face with both hands. It's funny. It's genuinely funny. What is... They purged the ERP, Marcus said, because they think the ERP is the system of record. He stood up. Sophia, he said, in 2013, did you ever hear anybody at Carter Sentinel talk about something called the ledger? She frowned. The general ledger. No, the ledger. Capital L, Sentinel Integrity Log. No. Elena. Never heard of it. Marcus put both hands on the back of his chair. That's because I never told anybody, he said. In 2013, I was sitting in a hotel room in Charlotte reading about a company in Texas that got hollowed out from the inside by its own CFO over 4 years, and the reason nobody caught it was that the CFO controlled the system that would have caught him. He looked up. So I went home and I built something. Built what? A write-once mirror, Marcus said. Every financial transaction, every approval, every permission change, every override, document that enters the audit committee queue. It gets hashed and written to an air-gapped appliance in a utility closet on the 3rd floor, and nothing on earth can modify it because it has no delete function. It doesn't have a delete function because I never wrote one. Sophia Reed sat up very slowly. Nobody knows it exists. Facilities thinks it's a fire panel, Marcus said. Elena Brooks put down her pen. Marcus, she said. Are you telling me there's a complete, unalterable record of every approval in that company sitting in a closet? Yes. For how long? 13 years. Then why? Elena said very carefully, are we sitting here? And Marcus said, because it's on a purge cycle. The room went quiet. Explain that. It's right once, but it's not infinite, Marcus said. I built it in 2013 on a 4-terabyte array. It holds 36 months rolling, and then it drops the oldest quarter automatically at the end of the retention window and reallocates. You can't delete a record on demand, but you can't stop the rollover either, because I hard-coded the schedule, so nobody could ever pause it to hide something. He looked at the clock on the wall. The current window drops the March quarter at midnight tonight. Sophia Reed said, "Oh my God." March, Elena said. The 11 days in March, when the vendors were onboarded. At 11:40 p.m., 12:15 a.m., and 1:03 a.m., Marcus said. Every permission escalation, every override, every credential switch time-stamped and hashed, including whoever logged into Dev Raman's account from a machine in the building while he was in Mumbai. And at midnight, it's gone. At midnight, it's gone forever, and I designed it that way personally, and I was very proud of myself at the time. Elena stood up. Then we go get it. Right now. I'll have an agent. You can't. Marcus, I have a warrant on that building. Your warrant covers financial records, communications, and server data belonging to the company, Marcus said. That appliance isn't on the network. It isn't in the asset register. It has never been on an inventory sheet. It's not depreciated. It doesn't exist on any document you can put in front of a magistrate. If you walk in there and pull a device nobody can prove is theirs, the first thing a defense attorney does in 8 months is move to suppress every byte of it as fruit of an unauthorized seizure. Elena stopped. He's right, Sophia said quietly. And there's a physical problem, Marcus said. There's no network interface. You can't pull it remotely. There's a port on the front of the unit, and you need to be standing in front of it with a key. And I'm the only person alive who has the key, and my credentials were terminated Friday afternoon. Then we get you in the door legally, Elena said. "You're the chairman. They'll stall me for 8 hours. You're a 51% shareholder. They'll stall me for 8 hours, Elena, because 8 hours is all they need." Nobody said anything. And then Sophia Reed said, "I know a way in." It took her about 90 seconds to explain it, and by the end, Marcus was sitting down again. "They took my badge," she said. "They didn't take my records custodian designation. When the federal warrant hit yesterday, legal sent a litigation hold notice to 19 people, and I'm on it because I'm still the compliance officer of record until the board removes me by resolution, and the board can't do that until the meeting. That notice legally obligates me to preserve documents. It's signed by their own general counsel." "That gets you in," Marcus said. "It doesn't get me in." "No," Sophia agreed. "But it gets a records custodian into the building with an escort of her choosing, and it does not say the escort has to be an employee. And there is nothing in that notice that says a compliance officer executing a preservation obligation has to tell corporate security which closet she's walking to." Elena Brooks put a hand over her eyes. "I'm going to pretend," she said, "that I did not hear the middle part of that." "Ms. Brooks," Sophia said, with respect, "I have followed every rule in that building for 11 years, and it got me 4 memos closed with the same 3 sentences and a badge taken away. I'd like to try something else." They went in at 9:20 that night. Grace Alvarez was working the desk. She looked up and she saw Sophia Reed, and then she saw the man standing half a step behind her, and Grace Alvarez did not say one single word. She just reached under the counter, hit the release for the accessibility gate, and turned her head to look at the elevator bank, like something over there had gotten interesting. "Grace," Marcus said quietly. "I didn't see anybody," Grace said. "Grace, you could lose." "Mr. Carter," she said, still looking at the elevators. "My son's arm was broken and you drove 90 miles an hour to North Side with him in the back of your truck, and you didn't ask whose fault it was one time. Go on now." They took the stairs. 3rd floor east utility corridor, a gray steel door with a peeling sticker that said, "Fire control, do not block." Marcus took a key off his ring, a small cheap brass key that had been on that ring since 2013 next to his house key, and a defunct fob for a truck he'd sold in 2016, and opened it. The unit inside was the size of a small microwave and had exactly 1 indicator light on the front, and the light was amber. "Amber's bad," Sophia said. "Amber's always bad." "Amber's fine. Amber means it's mid-cycle." Marcus crouched, pulled a laptop out of his bag and plugged into the port. "It goes green when it's idle and it goes amber when it's doing housekeeping." "What time does—" "Midnight." "Marcus, it's 9:34. "I know what time it is." He typed for 40 seconds. Stopped. "What?" Sophia said. "Hold on. What is it?" "The array's degraded." Marcus's voice didn't change, but his hands had gone still. 2 drives out of 8. It's been running degraded for, he scrolled, 411 days. "Is that bad?" "It means nobody replaced a drive in 411 days, which is correct because nobody knew it was here." He kept scrolling. "It also means the rebuild logic has been eating into the retention buffer to keep parity, which means the March quarter isn't dropping at midnight." Sophia felt her stomach go. "When is it dropping?" Marcus looked at the screen. 11:06, he said. She checked her phone. "That's 91 minutes. 92. Can you copy it in 92 minutes? "Not all of it." He was already typing. "Full quarter's about 1,100 gigs of hashed transaction data. Over this port at this bus speed on a degraded array that's 11-12 hours. "Then what do? We stop trying to save everything," Marcus said, "and we save the part that matters." He worked for 6 minutes without speaking, and Sophia Reed stood in a utility closet on the 3rd floor of a building she'd worked in for 11 years, listening to a 58-year-old man breathe through his nose and type. "Okay," he said. "Here's what I'm doing. I'm not pulling transactions. I'm pulling the permission and approval strata only, every privilege escalation, every control override, every audit queue insertion and modification for the 11-day window in March, plus the 4 dates your memos went in." He hit a key. "That's about 9 gigs, 40 minutes. That leaves 80% of it on the box." "Yes." "And at 11:06. At 11:06 the rest is gone and it never comes back." "Mr. Carter." "Sophia," Marcus said, "I built this thing to catch a thief in 2013 and it worked. In about 40 minutes it's going to hand me a name time-stamped and hashed that no lawyer on earth can argue with. Don't grieve the rest. The rest is receipts for catering." The transfer bar came up on the laptop screen. 4%. At 10:02, Sophia's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her whole face changed. Marcus? Yeah. Building-wide email. From the CIO. Effective immediately, all legacy and non-inventoried hardware is being decommissioned as part of a security remediation, and facilities has been directed to conduct a physical sweep of all floors tonight. Marcus did not look up from the screen. Tonight, he said. Tonight. At 10 o'clock at night, 8 days before a shareholder vote. On the same day, a federal prosecutor served a warrant. He watched the transfer bar. 19%. Somebody told them. Nobody knew. Somebody in that lobby saw us. Grace wouldn't. Not Grace. Marcus's jaw tightened. There are cameras at the turnstile, Sophia. I know because I bought them. Sophia Reed went to the door and put her ear against it and did not hear anything, which somehow made it worse. How long? 26 minutes. They'll be here in 10. Then they'll be here in 10. Marcus, if I pull the plug on this transfer, the file's corrupt and useless, and I've got nothing, and the whole thing drops at 11:06 anyway. He looked up at her for the first time. Go stand in the hallway. What? You're the records custodian executing a litigation hold. You have a legal right to be in this building tonight, and I don't. Go stand in the hallway, and when they come, tell them the truth. You're preserving documents under a notice signed by their own general counsel, and make them call legal, and make legal call outside counsel, and make outside counsel wake up a partner. He turned back to the screen. Every minute of that is a minute I've got. And when they get past me, then they get past you. Sophia Reed stood there for a second. Then she said, 11 years I did it their way. And she went out into the hallway and shut the steel door behind her. Marcus heard them at 10:31. He heard the stairwell door bang and boots and a man's voice saying, "Ma'am," and then Sophia Reed's voice going up loud and clear and absolutely unafraid saying, "My name is Sophia Reed. I am the compliance officer of record. I am executing a document preservation obligation under a litigation hold notice issued yesterday by your own general counsel at 4:52 p.m. And if you interfere with that, every one of you is going to spend a very long afternoon explaining spoliation to a federal judge." Somebody said something Marcus couldn't hear. "Then call him," Sophia said. "Call him at home. I'll wait." 41%. At 10:44, the argument in the hallway got louder and a second voice joined it, older, and Marcus recognized Krieg and felt his shoulders come up around his ears. 63%. At 10:52, the amber light on the front of the appliance flickered. Marcus stopped breathing. He put his hand flat on the top of the case, an absurd, stupid animal thing to do, and he knew it, and he did it anyway, the way a man puts his hand on a dog's head. "Not yet," he said. "Come on now, not yet." The light steadied. 81%. At 10:58, the steel door opened. Dale Krieg filled the frame with two facilities men behind him, and Sophia Reed's arm across the doorway at chest height, like a crossing gate, and everybody in that hallway saw the same thing. At the same time, a 58-year-old man crouched on a concrete floor in front of an open gray box with a laptop on his knees and a progress bar at 94%. "Get away from that," Krieg said. 90 seconds, Marcus said. "Get away from it now." 90 seconds and I'll walk out of here on my own feet, same as yesterday. Krieg stepped forward, and Sophia Reed, 5'4", 44 years old, a compliance officer who had never in her life so much as parked in a fire lane, moved sideways into the doorway and put both hands on the frame. "Mr. Krieg," she said, "if you put your hands on me, I will be the second person you've assaulted this week, and this time there's a federal warrant already on the building." Krieg stopped. 98%. "You're all fired," Krieg said. "Both of you. Tonight." "You can't fire the chairman," Marcus said, "and you can't fire her without a board resolution, and the board can't meet for 8 days. 99. The laptop chimed. Marcus pulled the cable, closed the lid, and stood up with both knees popping, and at 11:06 and 11 seconds, the amber light on the appliance went dark and then came back green, and 1,100 gigabytes of the third quarter of the fiscal year stopped existing anywhere in the world. He walked out past Krieg with 9 gigabytes under his arm. "Whatever you think you got," Krieg said, "it's stolen property." Marcus stopped in the hallway. "Son," he said, "do you know what that box is?" No, Marcus agreed. "Nobody does. That's the whole point. It isn't on the asset register. It isn't in the depreciation schedule. It isn't in any inventory. This company has filed in 13 years, and there is not one document anywhere that says it belongs to Carter Sentinel Technologies. He shifted the laptop under his arm. I bought it in 2013 with a personal check for $11,400. I have the check. So when you go upstairs and tell them I stole company property, I want you to remember that the only way anybody proves that is by proving the box is theirs. And the second they do that, everything on it is admissible. Krieg didn't say anything. Y'all can't have it both ways, Marcus said. Not this time. They opened the file in the lawyer's office at 12:40 in the morning, with Elena Brooks standing behind them and a forensic examiner from her office plugging in a write blocker, and it took 11 minutes to find it. March 4, 11:38 p.m., a privilege escalation on the account of Dev Raman initiated from a domain admin session. The session belonged to an IT director named Curtis Vance. The physical machine was in the building. March 4, 11:40 p.m., Halcyon Grid Solutions entered into the vendor master. March 9, 12:15 a.m. Meridian. March 15, 1:03 a.m. Ardent. And then, underneath all three, the three-gate control override, the one that should have required procurement, finance, and compliance to each independently approve a new vendor executed as a single administrative action under a governance exception. Whose authorization? Elena said. The examiner scrolled. There are two, he said. Sequential, 4 minutes apart. Read them. First one's the CEO, Victoria Hayes. Marcus nodded slowly. He'd known that since Tuesday morning at 8:41 on the phone. And the second, independent director sign-off required for any governance exception over $10 million. The examiner turned the screen. Robert J. Ambrose. Sophia Reed put her face in her hands. Marcus Carter stood there and looked at the name of the man who had loaned him $300,000 in 2004 and held his daughter's hand at a funeral in 2007 and did not say anything at all for a long time. Marcus, Elena said gently. I'm all right. Marcus. I said I'm all right. He cleared his throat. Keep going. What's in the audit queue, Strata? The examiner opened the second folder. And there it was, Sophia Reed's 4 memos, all 4 of them entering the audit committee queue with a timestamp and a hash, and then being marked reviewed and closed by a single user account between 9 and 40 seconds later. 9 seconds. That's not a review, Sophia said. Her voice was wrecked. 9 seconds. That's not I worked on the second one for 6 weekends. I know, Marcus said. 6 weekends. My son ate cereal for dinner twice because I was... She stopped and pressed her lips together hard. Sophia, look at me. Marcus waited until she did. 9 seconds is the best thing in this file. How is that? Because a man who takes 9 seconds thinks nobody's ever going to see it, Marcus said. That's not a cover-up. That's contempt. And contempt is what you can show to a jury. It was the forensic examiner who found the last thing at 2:10 in the morning, and he found it by accident. Ma'am, he said, there's an attachment class in the audit queue I don't recognize. Media objects. Elena leaned in. Meaning somebody uploaded an audio file into the committee document queue. It looks like it was pulled back out about an hour later, but this system hashed it on entry, and it doesn't have a delete. It doesn't have a delete function, Marcus said. He sat down in front of the laptop. Play it, Elena said. The audio was bad, a phone in a pocket, or a phone on a table too far from the speakers, but it was clear enough, and the first voice on it was a woman's, and everybody in that room recognized it immediately. Can't be a public transaction. He'll fight it in the press for a year. Victoria. Then a man, older, unhurried, a voice like a hand laid flat on a table. He won't be in a position to fight anything. Nathan, he's got 51% of the A shares. He's got 51% of a class that converts on certification. You brought me that clause. You were rather proud of it, as I recall. Pause. I need to hear you say the rest of it, Victoria said. The employment agreement, 5-year CEO of the successor board seat. You'll have paper on all of it. When? After. A chair moved. Nathan. Victoria. Very calm, very patient. Let me explain something about how this works because I think you've been telling yourself a story. In 11 months, when the government finishes looking at those vendors, and they always do, there will need to be a name on it. That's not a threat. That's arithmetic. Somebody authorized those disbursements from an executive terminal in that building, and it wasn't me because I have never once been in that building. Silence on the recording. 4 seconds of nothing. You set me up. I structured a transaction, Nathan Blackwell said. You set yourself up in March at 11:40 at night with your own credentials. I merely didn't stop you. A pause. You'll do fine. You'll take a settlement, you'll do 14 months at a camp in Alabama with a tennis court, and you'll write a book. I've seen it a dozen times. The ones who suffer are the ones who fight it. And the founder, Nathan said, is a sentimental man with a dead wife and a daughter in medical training and a great deal of pride. And men like that always do the same thing. They get angry in public. And the moment he does that, he isn't a whistleblower anymore. He's just an old man who lost his company and can't accept it. The recording ended. Nobody in the lawyer's office said anything for about 15 seconds. Then Sophia Reed said very quietly, "Who uploaded that?" And Elena Brooks, who had been standing behind them all night with her arms folded and had not moved once during the entire playback, said, "Victoria Hayes did." Marcus turned around. "She's your source," he said. 9 months, Elena said. "She came to me in October. She's been terrified out of her mind ever since, and she has done exactly one useful thing in 9 months, and that was uploading that file into a system she assumed her own audit committee would bury." Elena finally uncrossed her arms. "She was building an insurance policy, Marcus, against him. And then she put me on a countertop." "And then she put you on a countertop," Elena said, "because she was more afraid of him than she was ashamed of you." Marcus looked at the frozen waveform on the screen for a long moment. "Elena," he said. "Yeah." "How long has Victoria Hayes known that man was going to hand her to a grand jury?" Elena Brooks said. "Until about 4 minutes ago she didn't." And Marcus Carter picked up his phone. She picked up on the 4th ring, and she didn't say hello. "Don't call this number." "Victoria." "Marcus, I'm serious, do not." 1998, Marcus said. "The garage on Delmar. You want to know how I know it's really me and not a lawyer with a recorder? You interviewed in a folding chair, and there was a wasp nest under the eave, and you didn't flinch, and I hired you that afternoon because Renee said anybody who can sit under a wasp nest for 40 minutes and talk about latency can sit through anything." The line was quiet. "That's not fair," Victoria said. "No, it isn't. You can't, Marcus, you can't call me and say her name. I need 11 minutes. You need to hang up." "I've got the file," Marcus said. Silence. "Which file?" "October 3rd, 9 minutes and 41 seconds. A phone in a pocket in a room with hard chairs." He kept his voice down and flat. "He tells you you'll take a settlement and do 14 months at a camp in Alabama with a tennis court. He tells you the ones who suffer are the ones who fight it." He could hear her breathing. "That's not possible," Victoria said. I pulled it. I pulled it an hour after I put it in. I watched it delete. You watched a pointer disappear." "What?" "You watched the front end stop showing it to you," Marcus said. "The object was already hashed and written somewhere you've never heard of, and it's been sitting there since October, and I've got it on a laptop in a lawyer's office downtown, with a federal forensic examiner sitting next to it." He heard a sound then that he had never once heard from Victoria Hayes in 28 years of knowing her. She sat down. Hard. Somewhere in her house, a woman who had negotiated with the Department of Homeland Security in 3 administrations sat down in a chair like her legs quit. "Oh God," she said. "Victoria, oh God, listen to me. You don't understand what he—" "I understand exactly what he is," Marcus said. "He's a man who told you he was never in the building. He said it out loud, Victoria, on tape. I have never once been in that building. You know why a man says that sentence in a private room to his own partner?" She didn't answer. "Because he's already rehearsing it," Marcus said. "That's not a man talking to you. That's a man talking to a jury 11 months early, and you were the audience he practiced on." He heard her crying then, not loud, just the tight, ugly swallowing kind that people do when they've been holding something for 9 months and it finally comes out sideways. "I have a daughter," Victoria said. "I know you do." "She's 15. "I know." "Marcus, I put you on a counter." "Yes, you did." I stood on that stupid granite step, and I said thief in front of 400 people, and I looked right at you and I said it." "Yes, you did," Marcus said again, and he didn't soften it, and later he would think that was the only decent thing he did in that entire phone call. "I'm not going to tell you it's all right. It isn't all right. My daughter watched it on a phone in an ICU break room, and she's 22, and she's going to see it for the rest of her life." Victoria made a sound, But here's where we are, Marcus said. There are 7 days, and you can spend them being the woman who did that, or you can spend them being the woman who fixed it, and those are the only 2 doors in the hallway. There's a third one. No, there isn't. She stopped. You don't know what he does to people, Marcus. He doesn't shout. He doesn't threaten. He asks about your family in a friendly voice, and then he changes the subject and you spend 4 days trying to figure out whether it happened. I know exactly what that feels like, Marcus said. Somebody mailed me 26 photographs of my daughter at her bus stop in 2016 with no note on them at all. What? No note, Marcus said. That's the whole art of it, so don't tell me I don't know. The line was quiet for a long moment. Why are you calling me? Victoria said finally. You have the recording. You don't need me. Give it to Brooks and let her put me in front of a grand jury and be done with it. Because a recording isn't a person, Marcus said. Because in 7 days there's going to be a room with 11 institutional shareholders and 400 employees, and every one of them is going to be looking for a reason to believe this is just 2 rich people fighting over a company. And a recording can be argued about Victoria. A recording gets a motion filed against it. But a woman standing up in front of the people she lied to and saying, I did it, here's how, and here's who told me to, nobody files a motion against that. You want me to confess, publicly? Yes. You want me to end my life. I want you to end the part of it you can't keep anyway, Marcus said. Victoria, listen to me. That indictment is coming whether you help or not. Elena Brooks has had you for 9 months. The vendor entries are in your credentials. You're not deciding whether to go down. You're deciding what you're standing on when you do. Nothing on the line but her breathing. And there's one more thing, Marcus said. Ambrose, don't. Bob Ambrose signed the governance exception 4 minutes behind you. Marcus, don't. He sat at my kitchen table in 2007 with a casserole his wife made, Marcus said, and his voice finally slipped just for a second, just enough. And I've got a hash and a timestamp that says he closed Sophia Reed's memos in 9 seconds, 4 times, 9 seconds, 22 seconds, 11 seconds, and 38. Victoria Hayes said very quietly, he recruited me. Say that again. Nathan didn't come to me first. She was almost whispering. Bob did, 18 months ago, at the Capital City Club over lunch, and he told me you were checked out and the company was a takeover target with a founder who wasn't paying attention, and that there was a way to get liquidity for everybody and keep the platform in good hands. A pause. He said you'd thank us eventually. Marcus closed his eyes. Victoria, he said. Will you say that in a room? 9 seconds of silence. I want my lawyer there, she said, and I want Brooks to hear it first, and I want it on paper what happens to me, and I am not doing this for you. I never thought you were. I'm doing it because he was going to hand me to a grand jury and drive home and eat dinner. That'll do, Marcus said. The special shareholder meeting convened at 10 in the morning on the 7th day in the ballroom of a hotel 2 blocks from the building because the boardroom on 12 could not hold 400 people and 11 institutional proxies and the 41 reporters who had shown up because a video with 11 million views does that. Nathan Blackwell arrived at 9:41. I was 72 years old, and he did not look it, and he came in through the side entrance with 2 lawyers and a woman carrying a leather portfolio, and he shook hands with 3 people on the way to his seat, and he smiled at all of them. He did not look at Marcus Carter once. That was the tell. Marcus caught it and filed it. A man walks into a room where his enemy is sitting, and he either looks or he makes an effort not to, and there is no third option, and Nathan Blackwell made the effort. Bob Ambrose came in at 9:52 and stopped dead in the aisle. Because Marcus was sitting in the second row in a gray suit that was 11 years old with a legal pad and no lawyers at all, and Naomi Carter was sitting on his left in a navy dress with her arms folded, and Walter Briggs was sitting on his right in a tie. Marcus, Ambrose said, Bob, son, I have been trying to reach you for 6 days. Have you? I want you to know I had nothing to do with Tuesday. What they did to you in that lobby was, Ambrose put a hand on his chest. I called Victoria that night, and I told her it was a disgrace. Marcus looked up at him. Bob, he said, sit down and enjoy the meeting. Ambrose's face did something. He walked on. Naomi leaned over. That man came to Mom's funeral. He held your hand at the graveside, Marcus said. You were 4. You wouldn't hold mine because you were mad at me for crying. Naomi looked at the back of Robert Ambrose's head for a long moment. Okay, she said. The corporate secretary called the meeting to order at 10:04, and the general counsel stood up and read the notice, and then a man from the proxy solicitor read the preliminary tabulation, and the numbers were exactly what Marcus had known they would be for 6 days. The transaction had 61%. "Before we proceed to the vote," the chair said, and the chair was Robert Ambrose, because the chairman of the board was disqualified as an interested party, which was a thing Marcus had also known for 6 days. "The board recommends the transaction unanimously. I'll take a motion." "Mr. Chairman?" Marcus stood up. The room made a noise. "The chair recognizes—" Ambrose stopped. "Mr. Carter, you're welcome to speak during the shareholder comment period, which is after." "Point of order," Marcus said. "Under Article 6, Section 4 of the bylaws, any holder of more than 5% may compel a pre-vote disclosure hearing if material information has come to light after the notice was mailed." He didn't raise his voice. "I filed the demand with the corporate secretary at 8:15 this morning. She'll confirm receipt." The corporate secretary, a woman named Dolores, who had worked there since 2009, said into her microphone, "Received at 8:15, Mr. Chairman." Ambrose said, "This is highly irregular." "I wrote Article 6, Marcus said. Somebody in the back of the room laughed. It got away from them, and then it got away from about 9 other people, and Ambrose's jaw went tight. Nathan Blackwell's lawyer stood. "Mr. Chairman, we'd note for the record that this appears to be an attempt to disrupt a properly noticed—" "40 minutes, Marcus said. "That's what the bylaw allows. 40 minutes and then you vote. And if you vote for it anyway, I'll shake every hand in this room and go home. But you're going to hear it first." Ambrose looked at Blackwell, and 400 people saw the chairman of the audit committee of a public company look across a ballroom at an outside investor for instructions. Blackwell gave the smallest nod in the history of nods. 40 minutes, Ambrose said. Marcus did not walk to the podium. He walked to the side of the stage where the tech table was and plugged in a laptop, and then he came back down to the floor with a clicker in his hand and stood on the same level as everybody else, and he started talking the way a man talks in a kitchen. "Most of you don't know me," he said. "That's my fault. I've been gone 11 years and I let you think I quit." The room was very quiet. $47.4 million left this company in the last 14 months to 3 vendors that don't exist, he said. "Here's Ardent Facility Services, $19.2 million for site readiness. Here's the invoice for $411,000 for site prep at 3300 Braxton Industrial Parkway in Macon, Georgia, dated April 9th. Click. And here's a photograph of 3300 Braxton Industrial Parkway, taken 11 days ago by a compliance officer of this company on a Saturday with her 9-year-old in the back seat. It was a field. It was a field with a chain-link fence and weeds up to the middle of the fence and a faded sign for a development that had died in 2009. The room made a sound like a held breath letting go. "There's no building," Marcus said. "There's never been a building. We paid $411,000 to prepare a field." He clicked through 19 of them. He didn't editorialize. He read the address and the amount and showed the photograph, and by the 11th one, people had started saying things out loud, and by the 15th, a woman in the 4th row from the finance department had her hand over her mouth. "Now," Marcus said, "how does a vendor get into this company?" Click. 3 gates. Procurement verifies, finance codes, compliance clears. I wrote that in 2011, and it has never once been overridden in 14 years. He looked up. It was overridden 3 times in 11 days in March, at 11:40 at night, 12:15 in the morning, and 1:03 in the morning. "Mr. Chairman," Blackwell's lawyer said, "we have no way to authenticate under whose credentials," somebody shouted from the back. Marcus said, "A procurement analyst named Dev Raman." He let it sit for 1 beat. "Dev was in Mumbai," Marcus said, "at his sister's wedding, for 19 days. He didn't have a laptop with him. He's sitting in row 11 right now, and he found out about this on Thursday, and he has not slept since." 400 heads turned to row 11, where a young man in a blue shirt sat with his hands in his lap, looking like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "Somebody used a 31-year-old man's login," Marcus said, "at midnight to move $47 million so that if this ever came apart, he'd be the one holding it." The room got loud. Ambrose gavelled it. "And here," Marcus said, "is where I have to tell you something I've never told anybody in this company." He clicked. The image was a photograph of a small gray box in a utility closet. "In 2013, I built an integrity log," he said. "Air-gapped, right once, No delete function. It has recorded every approval, every permission change, and every override in this company for 13 years, and it is not on the network, and it was never in the asset register. And until 4 days ago, exactly one living person knew it existed. He looked directly at Nathan Blackwell for the first time all morning. Blackwell was looking back now. He'd stopped making the effort. Somebody purged the ERP in January, Marcus said. Records retention policy update approved by the audit committee. And they were right. Everything in the ERP is gone. It's clean. He turned back to the room. But the Mirror doesn't take instructions from anybody. Not from the CEO, not from IT, not from me. It just writes. Click. March 4th, 11:38 p.m. Privilege escalation on Dev Rahman's account from a domain admin session belonging to Curtis Vance. March 4th, 11:40 p.m. Halcyon Grid entered into the vendor master. 3-gate control override executed as a single administrative action under a governance exception. Click. Governance exceptions over $10 million require 2 signatures. The first one is the Chief Executive Officer, Victoria Hayes. The room roared. The second one, Marcus said, is the independent director who chairs the audit committee. He turned around. Bob, he said. Robert Ambrose sat very still behind the table on the stage with a gavel in his hand and 400 people looking at him. 4 minutes behind her, Marcus said. Every time. That's Marcus. Those approvals are routine and audit chair signs dozens of... Sophia Reed filed 4 memos with your committee over 18 months, Marcus said. Do you know how long each one was open before it came back marked reviewed, no action warranted, matter closed? Ambrose said nothing. 9 seconds, Marcus said. 22 seconds, 11 seconds, and 38. Somebody in the back said, Jesus. That last one was 61 pages, Marcus said. She worked 6 weekends on it. Her son ate cereal for dinner twice. 38 seconds, Bob. Ambrose's hand came off the gavel. And I'd like to say for the record, Marcus said, that this is the man who loaned me $300,000 in 2004 when 11 banks in this state wouldn't return my calls, and who stood at my wife's grave and held my daughter's hand because she was 4 years old and wouldn't hold mine. I have loved this man for 22 years. His voice went rough, and he let it. And he sat in a chair for 18 months and closed a woman's warnings in 9 seconds, so a man he met at a golf tournament could move this company offshore. Ambrose stood up. I'm not going to sit here and be... Sit down, Bob, said a voice from the back of the room. Everybody turned. Victoria Hayes was standing in the doorway with an attorney on either side of her. She'd lost weight in 7 days. That was the first thing 400 people noticed. The second was that she was not wearing a suit. She was in a plain black sweater, and she had a single sheet of paper in her hand, and her hands were shaking so badly the paper made noise. Nathan Blackwell's face did not change at all, which was, Marcus thought, the most frightening thing he had ever seen a human being do. Ms. Hayes, Ambrose said, you have been placed on administrative. I'm a shareholder, Victoria said. I'm speaking during the disclosure hearing. Sit down. Ambrose sat down. She walked up the center aisle, and she did not look at anybody, and about halfway up, she passed the row where the finance team sat, and a woman there said her name, and Victoria flinched like she'd been hit. She got to the front and turned around. On October 3rd of last year, she said, I recorded a conversation with Nathan Blackwell in a conference room at the Capital City Club because I had become afraid of him. In November, I gave that recording to the United States Attorney's Office. I have been a cooperating witness for 9 months. The room detonated. Blackwell's lawyer was on his feet. Mr. Chairman, this is... I authorized the vendor onboarding, Victoria said over him louder. I signed the governance exceptions. I directed Curtis Vance to escalate privileges on an employee account. I did it in March, and I did it knowing it was fraud. Victoria, Ambrose said, for God's sake. On Tuesday of last week, she said, I stood on a granite step in the lobby of this company and I accused Marcus Carter of stealing source code. She stopped. She had to. Her jaw was going. There was no theft, Victoria said. The drive was placed. The build on it was version 6.2, deprecated in 2021, pulled from a cold archive on an executive authorization. I know that because it was mine. She dragged in a breath. Marcus Carter has not badged into that building in 4.5 years, except for a Christmas party. He was in a Kroger parking lot in Decatur at the time of the alleged theft on the phone with his daughter because she'd lost a patient and she was crying. Naomi Carter put her hand over her mouth. "I did it," Victoria said, "because the merger needed him to look unstable for 9 days. That's all it needed, 9 days." The room was so quiet you could hear the air handlers. "And I want to say the last part," she said, "because it's the only thing I have left to give anybody." She looked out at 400 people. 18 months ago, Robert Ambrose bought me lunch at the Capital City Club and told me the founder was checked out and this company was a takeover target. He introduced me to Nathan Blackwell. He said Marcus would thank us eventually. She turned her head. "Bob, look at me. Say it isn't true." Robert Ambrose did not say anything. That was the moment. Everybody in the room felt it go. Nathan Blackwell stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He was completely calm, and when he spoke, his voice was warm and reasonable and pitched perfectly to Carrie, and Marcus understood in about half a second why the man had been getting away with this since the Reagan administration. "This is a tragedy," Blackwell said. "It really is. A woman under indictment testifying to save herself and a founder, who, and I say this with real sympathy, has never accepted that he walked away from his own company 11 years ago and it grew up without him." He spread his hands. "I've never been in that building. I've never met Ms. Hayes alone. I'm an investor. I saw a well-run company with an outdated governance structure, and I made an offer, and everything that has happened inside these walls happened without my knowledge, and frankly to my considerable financial detriment." He looked around the room with something that was almost kindness. "Vote however you like," he said. "But I'd ask you to notice that not one document Mr. Carter has shown you has my name on it." He sat down, and Marcus Carter said, "That's true." The room turned. "Not one document has his name on it," Marcus said. "He's been very careful for 40 years. There's no email, no wire he touched, no meeting he attended alone that anybody can prove. He is right about all of it." He walked over to the tech table. "So I'm not going to show you a document," he said. He hit the space bar, and a bad recording of a phone in a pocket in a room with hard chairs came out of every speaker in that ballroom. "He's got 51% of the A shares. He's got 51% of a class that converts on certification. You brought me that clause. You were rather proud of it, as I recall." Nathan Blackwell's face changed. It took about 3 seconds, and Marcus watched every frame of it, and he would think about it for years afterward, not with pleasure exactly, but with something. "I need to hear you say the rest of it. The employment agreement, 5 years CEO of the successor board seat. You'll have paper on all of it. When? After." Blackwell's lawyer was standing shouting about authentication, about admissibility, about a motion in limine, and nobody in that ballroom was listening to a single word of it. "There will need to be a name on it. That's not a threat. That's arithmetic. Somebody authorized those disbursements from an executive terminal in that building, and it wasn't me because I have never once been in that building." 400 people made a sound. "You set me up." "I structured a transaction. You set yourself up in March at 11:40 at night with your own credentials. I merely didn't stop you. You'll do fine. You'll take a settlement. You'll do 14 months at a camp in Alabama with a tennis court, and you'll write a book." Marcus stopped it there. He did not play the last part. He'd thought about it for 2 days, the part about a sentimental man with a dead wife and a daughter in medical training, and he'd decided at 4 in the morning that his daughter was going to be sitting in the second row. He turned the volume down and looked at Nathan Blackwell. "You were never in the building," Marcus said. "I agree. You never had to be. You did it with a clause on page 11 of an employee equity expansion that I signed in 2019 because a woman I trusted told me it was good for the people who work here." He set the clicker down. "I read 9 pages of an 11-page document, and it cost me everything, and I've had 7 days to sit with that." He looked out at the room. "Y'all can still vote for it," he said. 61% is 61%, and the transaction is legal, and the clause is enforceable. And if you vote yes in about 10 minutes, that platform goes into a Cayman parent, and 18 months of federal oversight sunsets on the code that runs 911 failover in 31 states and backup power sequencing in 1,100 hospitals. He paused. "That's not a threat either. That's just Section 9. I wrote it in 2009 so that if I got hit by a bus, whoever bought this place would have a runway instead of a cliff." I was quiet for a second. "I wrote the whole," he said. "Every single thing that happened to this company happened through a door I built myself for good reasons when I was younger, and I thought the only thing you had to protect a system from was strangers." He picked up his legal pad. "That's my 40 minutes, Marcus said. Vote. At 11:51, the proxy solicitor's representative walked to the microphone with a piece of paper and read the final tabulation, and Marcus Carter would remember for the rest of his life that the man's voice cracked on the second number. 11 institutional holders had withdrawn their proxies during the hearing. The transaction failed with 19%. Nobody cheered. That was the thing Naomi told him about later in the car, that 400 people sat in a hotel ballroom and watched a merger die, and not one of them made a sound because there wasn't anything in that room to cheer about. Robert Ambrose resigned from the board of directors at 11:58 in a 2-sentence statement read by the corporate secretary because he had already left through a side door. Elena Brooks was standing in the back of the ballroom with 4 agents, and she had been standing there since 10:40, and she waited until the meeting was adjourned before she moved, because she was a careful woman, and a properly noticed shareholder meeting is not a place to make an arrest. She caught Nathan Blackwell in the corridor by the coat check. Marcus didn't watch it. He'd thought he would want to, and when the moment came he found he didn't, and instead he turned around and looked for his daughter, and found her already standing there with her arms out. Dad, I know. Dad, I know, baby. Walter Briggs came up beside them, 71 years old, still in the tie, and put a hand on Marcus's shoulder and squeezed it once and didn't say anything at all because there wasn't a thing in the world he could have added. And on the way out through the ballroom doors, in a hallway full of reporters shouting his name, a 9-year-old boy in a Braves jersey stood on a chair by the coat check next to Sophia Reed, holding his mother's purse with both hands, and Marcus Carter stopped in the middle of everything and shook that boy's hand and said, "Your mama's the reason. You remember I told you that." The board met 11 days later on the 12th floor, and they offered him the CEO position before the coffee was poured. It was a woman named Diane Okafor who made the motion, newly seated a former hospital system COO, the only director in that room who hadn't been there in March. She made it and then said, "And frankly, Mr. Carter, I'd like the record to show the vote should be unanimous and immediate." 7 hands went up. Marcus looked at the table for a while. "No," he said. Somebody said, "Marcus, I appreciate it, I mean that." He folded his hands. "But you're not offering me a job. You're offering me absolution, and it's the same mistake this company made in 2011 when I handed one person the keys and went home." "That's not fair to you," Diane said. "It's exactly fair to me," Marcus said. "One person had all the control, then one different person had all the control. Y'all want to fix that by giving it back to the first person." He shook his head. "That's not a fix. That's a rerun." "Then what do you want?" "I want the thing that makes it so the next Marcus Carter doesn't have to build a box in a closet with his own money to find out what's happening in his own company." He'd written it out on a legal pad at his kitchen table at 3 in the morning because that was still when he woke up, and he read it off that legal pad, and it took 40 minutes. As independent integrity office reporting to the board and to the shareholders directly with a budget, the CEO could not touch, and a director the CEO could not fire. A whistleblower channel that went outside the building to an independent counsel with mandatory disclosure to shareholders of every report and its disposition, including how long it stayed open. No more 9 seconds. An employee ownership expansion, a real one this time, all 431 people with the conversion clauses read out loud, page by page in a room by a lawyer the employees picked, and Section 9. "We renegotiate it with the government," Marcus said. "No sunset on change of control. If somebody buys this company, the oversight comes with it or the contract dies. It'll cost us. It'll make us less attractive to acquirers, which is the entire point." Diane Okafor said, "You're deliberately making the company harder to sell." "I'm making it impossible to steal," Marcus said. "There's a difference, and I paid a lot of money to learn it." It passed 9-0. They hired Sophia Reed to run the integrity office in September, and she took 11 days to answer. And when she called Marcus back, she said, "I want it in writing that I report to the board and not to you either." "It's already in there," Marcus said. "Paragraph 4. "I know it is. I read all 11 pages. Marcus laughed out loud alone in his kitchen for a long time. Victoria Hayes pleaded guilty in November to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and to falsification of corporate records. She got 26 months, which was more than her lawyers promised her, and less than she deserved. And Marcus wrote a letter to the sentencing judge that he never told anybody about, except Naomi. And Naomi read it and handed it back and said, "You're a better man than me, and I want you to know I don't like it." "You don't have to like it." She put your face on a counter, Dad. She also stood up in a room with 400 people and said his name, Marcus said. Both things are true. I'm too old to pretend one of them cancels the other one out. Robert Ambrose was indicted in January. He fought it for 14 months. He was 76 years old, and he spent his savings on lawyers, and he lost. And the worst part, the part Marcus never got over, was that he never once called. Not before the indictment, not after the verdict. 22 years, a line of credit in 2004, a hand held at a graveside in 2007, and not one phone call. Why does that bother you more than the rest of it? Naomi asked him. Because I'd have taken it, Marcus said. If he'd called me and said, Marcus, I got old and I got scared about money and I did something terrible, I'd have said, I know Bob. Come sit on the porch. He turned his coffee cup around. He'd rather go to prison than be seen. That's what money does to a man over 40 years. It teaches him that the worst thing on earth is somebody knowing what he really is. Nathan Blackwell's trial ran 9 weeks. He had 6 lawyers and a jury consultant and a documentary crew that quit halfway through, and he never took the stand, and the tape played in that courtroom 4 separate times. The verdict came back on a Thursday afternoon in the fall. Marcus was not in the room. He was in a parking lot in Macon, Georgia, standing at a chain-link fence in front of a field, with weeds up to the middle of the fence, because Sophia's integrity office had bought that parcel for $11,000 at a tax sale, and they were going to put a training facility on it, and Marcus wanted to see the dirt before anybody poured anything on it. Elena Brooks called him at 4:20. Guilty, she said. All 11 counts. Marcus didn't say anything for a second. You there? I'm here. Marcus, you can say something. I'm standing in the field, he said. Elena went quiet. The one from the photograph. $411,000 for site preparation, Marcus said. There's a Coke can and about 900 pounds of kudzu. You want to know the number? No. He got... Elena, Marcus said. I don't want the number. I've had that man in my life for 19 months and I'd like to hang up the phone and have him be gone. Elena Brooks said, Okay. Then she said, Rockville. Rockville, Marcus said. 11 o'clock at night in a parking deck. You had a folder in a grocery bag. I remember. You know what I thought when I drove home that night? Elena said. I thought that man's going to get scared and stop calling me by March. She paused. That was 10 years ago, and you have never once stopped. Marcus looked at the field. You want to know the truth, he said. I got scared every single time. That's not the same as stopping. He took the CEO job for exactly 19 months. He'd said no in the boardroom and he meant it. And then in March of the following year, the interim resigned for family reasons and the search stalled. And Diane Okafor called him and said, 19 months. You stand it up, you hand it off, and you have my word. I'll hold you to the date. And Marcus said, put the date in the resolution. And she did. He worked out of the same office he'd had in 2011. He kept the badge on the black lanyard with the 15-year-old photograph on it, and every morning he tapped it at the turnstile like everybody else and it went green. Grace Alvarez retired that June after 13 years at the front desk and at her party in the lobby under the mezzanine where 50 phones had once filmed a man's face on a countertop. Marcus stood up on the granite riser, the same one, and told 400 people what she'd done with the accessibility gate on a Wednesday night, and Grace Alvarez cried so hard she had to sit down. You could have fired me, she said afterward. Grace, I couldn't even get in the door. You could have gotten me fired. You bought me 40 minutes, Marcus said. There's a jury in a federal courthouse that heard a tape because you looked at the elevators. On the last day of the 19 months, he cleaned out the office in about 11 minutes because there wasn't much in it, and the last thing he took off the wall was the photograph of Renee at somebody's cookout in 2005, laughing at something off camera holding a paper plate. Naomi was waiting in the lobby. She was 25 now and 11 weeks from finishing her fellowship, and she had her hands in the pockets of a coat because it was January. That's it, she said. One box. Dad, you ran a company. I ran it for 19 months. Sophia's office ran the parts that mattered. He shifted the box. Come on, I'll buy you a bad lunch. They stopped in the middle of the lobby, though, because people kept coming over a woman from finance who'd had her hand over her mouth in the 4th row of a hotel ballroom, a young man in a blue shirt named Dev Raman, who now ran procurement, and who shook Marcus's hand with both of his, the way he had every single time for 4 years, and probably always would. And then it cleared out, and it was just the two of them standing on the polished floor near the reception desk, with the gray running through the granite, because Renee had liked it in a warehouse in Tucker, Georgia, in 2011. Naomi looked at the counter. "Does it bother you?" she said. "Standing here now every time. Then why do you keep coming?" Marcus thought about it. "Because it happened," he said. "Because there's a version of this where I sell the building and pretend it didn't, and then I'd have let them decide what this floor means." He set the box down on the counter. "They put my face on this thing to tell 400 people a story about who I was. And every day for 4 years I've walked across it, and every day it's meant a little less of that and a little more of something else. That's not forgetting baby, that's the opposite." Naomi was quiet a second. "Mom would have loved all this," she said. "No, she wouldn't." "Dad, she'd have hated every minute of it," Marcus said, and he was smiling. "She'd have hated the lawyers and the reporters and the ballroom. You know what she'd have liked, the field in Macon. She'd have liked that we bought the field." Naomi laughed with her eyes full. "Can I ask you the thing I've wanted to ask you for 4 years? Ask it. When they had you on that counter," she said it carefully, "you had 51%. You had the truth. You had a federal prosecutor walking through the door in about 90 seconds. You didn't know that yet, but you had everything and you just let them put those cuffs on you. Why?" Marcus looked at the granite for a long moment. "Because a man who's telling the truth doesn't have to win the next 90 seconds, he said. He only has to still be telling it when everybody finally turns around and looks." He picked up the box. "Come on," he said. "Lunch." And they walked out together through the front doors of a building that had thrown him out in handcuffs under the brushed steel letters he'd argued about for 2 weeks in 2011 past 400 people who now knew exactly who he was, not because he was rich, and not because his name was on the wall, but because when everything he'd built was taken from him in front of the whole world, Marcus Carter never once traded the truth for a faster way home.